Hi, my name is Dr. Shannon Cleverly Thompson, and I serve as interim chair and visiting assistant professor for the EDD program in executive leadership in the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. School of Education at St. John Fisher College. As we all know, in March 2020, the World Health Organization declared a pandemic due to the arrival of the COVID-19 virus. Since then, we have seen our world, nation, and local communities experience significant disruption and major changes. These changes have and still are affecting all of our lives, especially in our organization. As colleges and universities, as well as K-12 schools, are starting to reopen this fall, we find ourselves adjusting yet again to a different kind of world. The threat of COVID-19 remains, which leaves organizations with uncertainty and the necessity to continue to make shifts in our day-to-day work. We know change is going to happen in life. However, this pandemic has brought on massive changes in a very short amount of time, so much so that many of us may be experiencing a little bit of change overload. Leading is hard. Leading is even harder in a crisis, and the pandemic is requiring us to create the playbook as we live it. In this episode of Fisher's Insta Experts, I will share a few leadership strategies on how we can be effective during these times of constant change and uncertainty. These are not the only leadership strategies, but they do represent those supported by research regarding how best to lead effectively in times of great change and crisis. The first strategy is to practice humility and compassion. Leading with humility and compassion is not about we don't think about ourselves ever, but it's thinking about others more than we do ourselves. It's about paying attention to how changes are affecting our employees and our colleagues and the people we care about. Times are stressful for everyone right now. More than ever before, leaders need to acknowledge and pay attention to the emotions that people are experiencing. When we are practicing humility and compassion, we are checking in with people and seeing how they are doing amidst all these changes. We need to ensure that they know that we acknowledge their contribution and that they are valued in our organizations. For example, when I was checking in with the advisees in the executive leadership program, I learned that one of our students is working from home with 2 kids under the age of 4, and her husband is only home on Sundays due to being an essential worker. By hearing how she was experiencing all these changes, I was better able to acknowledge and meet her needs. We then started scheduling our Zoom meetings on Sunday or when her kids were taking a nap. So research suggests that the more time that leaders spend reaching out to others with compassion and humility, they are far more effective than those leaders who do not. So a question we can ask ourselves to help practice the strategy is to ask ourselves, what am I doing to engage with individuals and ensure they know I care about them and value their contribution? So a second strategy for how leaders can be effective during constant change and uncertain times is to communicate with frequency, honesty, and hope. In a world of immediacy and information overload, people want to know what's going on. Otherwise, they start to make assumptions without all the facts. The frequency of communication during times of change is key. During the pandemic, for example, some of the leaders that I know created daily Zoom check-ins, or they did weekly emails out to their organization. So based on your team and your organizational culture, try to find a way to communicate so that everyone can be included and are informed as much as possible. In our communications, we also need to be mindful about how our messages will be received. For example, to help show confidence and hope during another change in my own organization, I can say, I know that this is not maybe what we wanted, but I do know that we can work together and make it work. We won't always have the answer either. So we just need to share that truth as well and do the best that we can with the information that we do have. Moreover, when our plans and approaches change, which they inevitably will during all these challenging situations, we need to explain why and how to the best of our ability. Be transparent and honest, and people respect the truth, and that will help sustain and create trusting relationships. So a second reflection question to ask ourselves is, how can I communicate what is happening, what is being done, and what we will need to do next, while also providing people with hope and confidence? The last leadership strategy I'll share for how we can be effective during these times is to be adaptable and open to opportunities. Finding our way through these challenges are going to require us all to be flexible. Most people do not seek out change and disruption in their life. Before COVID-19, we actually had to work pretty hard on getting outside of the box to be creative and innovative. Well, as John Maxwell said, COVID-19 blew up the box. We have no box. We're building a new box. We have been taken out of all of our normal way of doing things and away from all of our habits. Therefore, being adaptable means we need to learn how to see challenges from different perspectives. We have all had to find ways to shift how we do things that were once automatic in our life. We are creating new habits, like working remotely, wearing a face mask, and practicing social distance. Leaders must be willing and able to imagine new ways of doing things. This doesn't mean that everything must change or that everything should change. We are just having to find new ways of working while also staying in compliance with all these newly implemented policies and restrictions to help keep everyone safe. Another way to be adaptable and open to opportunities is to not get too attached to one single plan. I mean, that's why leaders are creating plan A's and B's and C's and even plan D's. We also have to realize that the first idea we have may not be the final or the only idea. So we have to be able to listen to more than just our own ideas or the ideas that would benefit us or our department or organization the most, which is kind of going back to having humility. A crisis like what our world is facing can also be a catalyst for making improvements in our organizations. There are countless examples of how organizations are changing the way in which they do business, and there is no doubt that the global outbreak of COVID-19 is going to continue to present problems along the way. However, buried beneath all of the hard stuff and difficult things can be opportunities for growth and for learning and reinvention if we are open to receiving it. Therefore, the last two reflection questions to help us be more adaptable and open to opportunities are: how am I anticipating and preparing and responding to the changes brought on by the pandemic? What am I doing to turn those changes into opportunities for growth, learning, and reinvention in my organization? I didn't say the strategies were easy, because remember, leading is hard, and leading during a pandemic or a crisis is even harder. But as we respond to all the ever-changing and uncertain world ahead of us, my hope is that these strategies and reflection questions can serve as a resource. The reality is that how well we move forward this fall will depend on leadership. We can choose to be more mindful in how we show up as a leader, whether that's in a Zoom or Microsoft Team meeting, the classroom, what we send in an email or leave in a message on a voicemail, in the boardroom, or in our own communities. So I just want to say thank you to St. John Fisher College for the opportunity to share these leadership strategies, and may they serve as just an additional resource as we enter into the fall 2020 semester. Thank you.